On March 17, 1982, as the thaw in Missouri's Ozark Hills began to expose the harsh winter's secrets, an assistant social worker named Margaret Wilson arrived at a remote cabin in Shannon County. Her discovery would permanently reshape her view of extreme social isolation and the devastating impact of institutional neglect within America's rural heartland. The Shelton property sat 27 kilometers from the nearest town, Current River, reachable only by a dirt road that turned to mud each spring. The family had existed with almost no outside contact for more than 30 years. An anonymous tip to the Missouri Department of Social Services, alleging children were living in unsanitary conditions and potential abuse, had prompted Margaret's visit. At the property, Margaret was met by Elijah Shelton, 47, a man of average height with a grey beard and piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold the weight of generations of solitude. Living with him were his sister, Martha Shelton, 43, and 3 children, Thomas, 12, Suddy, 9, and little Jacob, just 5 years old. The cabin, constructed by Elijah's grandfather in the 1920s, was a wooden 2-bedroom structure with a kitchen and living area. A small barn, a vegetable garden, and a well were on the land. There was no electricity or running water. Their isolation was nearly absolute, with only occasional trips to town for supplies they couldn't produce themselves. The day was mild, around 17 degrees Celsius and partly cloudy. The recent thaw had left the ground muddy, the air carrying the scent of wet earth and rotting wood. During her initial inspection, Margaret saw the children showed signs of mild malnutrition and a lack of essential medical care. Thomas had a badly healed scar on his right arm from an axe accident the prior year. Suddy had a slight strabismus that had never been addressed. Jacob, the youngest, displayed signs of cognitive developmental delay. What truly captured Margaret's attention, however, were the powerful physical similarities shared by all 5 individuals. The same intense blue eyes, the same bone structure, the same ear shape, traits that hinted not just at relation, but at a very close bloodline. When questioned about the children's mother, Elijah paused before stating his wife had died in childbirth with Jacob. Martha stayed silent, avoiding the social worker's gaze. It was at that moment Margaret started to doubt the story. County records held no marriage certificate for Elijah Shelton. The only documents found were the birth certificates for Elijah and Martha, children of Harold and Edith Shelton, and a land deed from 1924. The children had no official birth certificates. The family's isolation had deepened after their parents died in a fire in 1973. Since then, the siblings had severed nearly all community ties. Margaret's suspicion that Martha was the children's biological mother grew as she observed the family's dynamics. The way Jacob clung to Martha's skirts, her intuitive understanding of each child's needs, and the profound maternal bond in her eyes, which seemed deeper than that of an aunt. If you want to follow more cases like this, which shake society to its core and bring hidden truths to light, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single investigation. The formal Shelton case investigation launched on March 24, 1982. The Missouri Department of Social Services, together with the Shannon County Sheriff, sent a team including Margaret, Officer David Tanner, and pediatrician Dr. Robert Hayes. Their first challenge was Elijah's resistance. Confronted with direct questions about the children's origins, he became defensive, insisting authorities had no right to interfere. "We take care of our own," he repeated, a phrase later revealed to carry a disturbing meaning. Martha remained largely silent. Dr. Hayes's examinations revealed worrying signs beyond malnutrition. He noted physical characteristics potentially indicating genetic issues consistent with inbreeding. Thomas had polydactyly, an extra finger on his left hand. Suddy had dental development issues, and Jacob showed more severe cognitive impairment than first thought. These signs, in isolation, can have various causes, Dr. Hayes noted in his report. But together, combined with the shared physical traits and family isolation, they raise serious concerns about possible consanguinity. The investigation intensified when the team accessed old medical records. Records showed Martha had been treated in 1970, while 3 months pregnant, but there was no record of a birth. A pattern emerged. Martha had been seen at different hospitals in 1970, 1973, and 1977 years corresponding to the children's births, each time under a different name. When Elijah blocked investigators from the property, a crucial witness came forward, Sarah Jenkins, an 83-year-old neighbor and friend of the siblings' late mother, Edith. Sarah revealed she had seen Martha visibly pregnant in 1971, but Elijah had thrown her off the land. "I should have done something then," Sarah lamented. "But who would have believed me?" A key discovery was that Elijah and Martha's own parents, Harold and Edith, were first cousins. This suggested a generational pattern of endogamy. The theory developed that the siblings, already isolated and influenced by distorted beliefs about blood purity, had entered an incestuous relationship. The case reached a stalemate until September 1982, when Margaret found young Jacob with a severe fever and respiratory infection. She convinced Elijah to let the child be hospitalized. There, a genetic specialist, Dr. Michael Brennan, conducted tests with Elijah's reluctant consent. The results revealed multiple subtle congenital anomalies forming a pattern consistent with a high degree of consanguinity, typical of children born from relationships between first-degree relatives. During Jacob's 2-week hospitalization, an exhausted Martha began to open up to Margaret. She spoke of the growing isolation after their parents' death and how Elijah had assumed control. "Elijah said the outside world wanted to separate us, hurt us. We could only trust each other," she whispered. While not an explicit confession, her words clarified the situation for Margaret. Further evidence came from the diary of Reverend Samuel Miller, a traveling pastor who had visited in 1969 and 1971. His 1971 entry noted he saw Martha from a distance, appearing heavily pregnant, and was threatened by Elijah when he mentioned it. This provided contemporary corroboration. With this new evidence, a judge authorized DNA tests. The results in November 1982 were conclusive. Elijah was the biological father and Martha the biological mother of all 3 children. Leave a comment saying "I'm here for the truth" if you believe all cases of family abuse deserve investigation, no matter how isolated the community. On December 7, 1982, Elijah Shelton was formally charged with incest. Martha, seen as a victim of prolonged coercion, faced no criminal charges, but her fitness as a parent was questioned. The trial in February 1983 was complex. Elijah's defense argued his extreme isolation had compromised his understanding of social norms. The prosecution contended he knew right from wrong, citing his ability to conduct business and hide the relationship. Martha testified behind closed doors, describing how Elijah gradually controlled her life, convincing her they were special and their blood was pure. A psychiatrist explained the effects of extreme isolation and indoctrination. The trial also highlighted institutional failures, as concerns had been raised by others over the years but never properly followed up. The jury found Elijah guilty but recommended leniency. Judge Eleanora Simmons sentenced him to 3 years in prison, with parole possible after 18 months, plus mandatory psychological treatment. In her final statement, the judge noted, "This case represents a collective failure. Geographical isolation should not mean institutional abandonment." The children were placed in state custody while Martha received intensive therapy. Thomas showed remarkable resilience, eventually catching up in school. Suddy faced more challenges but found stability. Jacob required multiple surgeries and lifelong care for Apert syndrome and other conditions. Martha regained custody in 1984 after 2 years of treatment. With state help, she moved the family to West Plains, earned her GED, and found work. Thomas became a social worker, Suddy an artist, and Jacob, despite limitations, became an advocate for people with disabilities in rural areas. The case led to policy changes, including the Shelton Law of 1985, which established stricter protocols for monitoring isolated families. Elijah served 22 months before his release in 1985. In a 2002 interview, a retired Margaret Wilson reflected, "What's most striking is how something so extreme could happen practically in plain sight. It makes you wonder how many other similar cases exist." The original Shelton cabin eventually collapsed, the land a silent testament to how isolation can distort reality for generations. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about cases that leave a permanent mark. Leave a comment saying I watched until the end so I know who is truly committed to understanding these complex truths. Don't forget to like and share this video with those who value delving into the complexities of human nature and the vital importance of protection systems. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so now to follow more investigations that challenge us to reflect on our society and collective responsibility.